My husband stood in our kitchen doorway with his mother beside him. "Sarah," he said carefully, "Mom thinks we should talk about your contribution to this household." I looked up from my laptop where I'd been working. "My contribution." His mother stepped forward, designer handbag clutched like a weapon. "Daniel works 70 hours a week at the firm. He's a senior partner. And you, well, you work from home doing what exactly? Data entry." I closed my laptop slowly. "Is that what you think I do, Margaret? It doesn't matter what I think, dear. What matters is that my son is supporting this entire household while you click around on a computer all day." I looked at Daniel, my husband of 6 years, the man I'd built a life with. "And you agree with her?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Sarah, you have to admit, you've never really explained what your job entails. You work odd hours, you take calls at weird times, you're always busy, but there's no visible career progression." "Visible career progression," I repeated slowly. "Yes, like promotions, raises, a title that means something. My friends ask what my wife does, and I say you work in tech consulting, but that's so vague." His mother jumped back in. "What Daniel is trying to say is that he's tired of carrying the financial burden alone. Perhaps it's time you looked for something more substantial. My friend Carolyn is hiring administrative assistants at her husband's accounting firm. The pay is quite good." I stood up from the table. "Get out." Margaret blinked. "Excuse me? Out of my house, now. This is Daniel's house too," she said indignantly. "Actually," I said, keeping my voice level, "it's not. This house is in my name, purchased with my money before we got married. Daniel moved in with me, not the other way around." Daniel looked confused. "What are you talking about? We bought this together." "No, Daniel, you moved into my house 6 years ago. We never changed the deed because my lawyer advised against it for tax purposes. But you never asked about that either, did you?" Margaret was turning red. "This is absurd. Daniel, tell her she's being ridiculous." But I wasn't done. "Margaret, I want you to leave. Daniel, we need to talk, but not with your mother here." "I'm not going anywhere until someone explains what's happening," Margaret said. "Fine." I walked to my home office and came back with a folder. "You want to know what I do? I run a data security consulting firm. We handle cybersecurity for Fortune 500 companies. When major corporations get hacked, when government databases get breached, when billions of dollars are at risk, they call me." I opened the folder and spread papers across the kitchen counter. "This is from last year's tax return. My company grossed $8.4 million. My personal income after expenses and employee salaries was $2.7 million. The silence was deafening. "That's impossible," Margaret whispered. "You don't even have an office." "I have 4 offices. Seattle, Boston, Austin, and one in London. I work from home 2 days a week because I can. Because I built a company efficient enough that I don't need to perform productivity for anyone." I turned to Daniel. "For 6 years, I've been paying 70% of our household expenses. The mortgage, the cars, the vacations, your student loans that you're still paying down. I covered your half when you were between jobs for 8 months. I never mentioned it because I thought that's what partners did." Daniel's face had gone white. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I did tell you. 7 years ago when we met, I told you I ran a cybersecurity consulting firm. You said that sounded technical and boring and changed the subject. Every time I tried to talk about my work, you'd zone out or interrupt with something about your cases at the law firm." "But $2.7 million, he stammered. "I would have noticed that kind of money." Would you? Did you notice that I paid for our honeymoon in full, $30,000 for 2 weeks in Italy? Did you notice when I bought your Tesla? 75,000. Did you notice when I paid off the 60,000 in credit card debt you'd accumulated? You never asked where the money came from. You just assumed your salary covered everything. Margaret found her voice. If this is true, why would you hide it? What kind of wife hides her success from her husband? The kind who wanted her husband to feel like a man, I said quietly. The kind who thought making herself smaller would make her marriage bigger. The kind who was wrong about everything. I looked at Daniel. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, Meridian Restaurant. Your mother, your brother Thomas, your sister Jennifer, and your law partner Rick are all invited. I've already sent the invitations. I suggest you attend. Sarah, wait, Daniel started, but I was already walking away. We'll talk tomorrow, at dinner, in front of everyone who thinks I'm not substantial enough. I spent that night at my office downtown. Not because I had to, but because I needed space from the house that suddenly felt like a museum of my own diminishment. The building was mostly empty, just security guards and a few dedicated programmers burning midnight oil. My company occupied the entire 15th floor. Glass walls, standing desks, a view of the sound that made clients feel like they were making important decisions at the top of the world. I'd started the company 9 years ago, fresh out of MIT with a master's in computer science and a bone-deep understanding that most corporate security was garbage. My first client had been a mid-size pharmaceutical company that had been hacked, their research data stolen, their stock price tanking. They'd hired me out of desperation after 3 larger firms had failed to fix the breach. I'd found the vulnerability in 48 hours, patched it, implemented new protocols, and traced the hack back to a competitor's hired mercenary. The pharmaceutical company's stock recovered. They paid me $200,000 for 3 weeks of work and told every CEO they knew about the young woman who'd saved their company. Word spread fast in the insular world of corporate disasters. Within 2 years, I was billing $1 million annually. By year 4, I had 12 employees and clients in 6 countries. By year 6, when I met Daniel, I was running one of the most respected boutique security firms in the industry, and I'd somehow convinced myself that none of it mattered as much as being a good wife. I pulled up my banking app on my laptop and stared at the numbers. The account I'd set up for household expenses, the one Daniel had access to, showed a balance that matched roughly what his salary would cover. He'd never questioned why bills always seemed to get paid even when his account ran low. He'd never wondered how we could afford the lifestyle we lived on his salary alone. The account he didn't know about, my primary business account, told a different story. Years of deposits, wire transfers from clients, quarterly tax payments that would have made his eyes water. I'd kept it separate not because I was hiding it, but because I'd convinced myself that our marriage worked better when he felt like the successful one. My phone buzzed, a text from Daniel. "Can we please talk? This is insane. Come home." I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back. "Tomorrow at dinner, bring your family." Another buzz. "My mother is mortified. She says she didn't mean it the way it sounded." "Your mother called me a burden who does data entry. She said I have no visible career. She suggested I get a job as someone's administrative assistant. How exactly did she mean it?" No response to that. I set my phone face down and went back to work. The next morning, I woke up on the couch in my office and checked my emails. One from my assistant confirming that the reservation at Meridian was set for 7 people. One from my accountant asking if I wanted him to attend the dinner as well. I'd told him what I was planning. He'd offered to bring documentation. I told him I had everything I needed. One email from Daniel, sent at 3 in the morning. I'm sorry I never asked about your work. I'm sorry I assumed I knew what your life looked like. I'm sorry I let my mother talk about you that way. Please come home so we can discuss this privately. We don't need to do this in front of everyone. I deleted it. If we were going to have this conversation, it was going to be on my terms, with witnesses, with no room for him to rewrite the narrative later. I spent the day preparing my presentation. Not elaborate, just clear, professional, undeniable. Bank statements showing 6 years of household contributions. The deed to our house with my name alone on it. Receipts for every major purchase, every vacation, every time I'd covered his shortfall without mentioning it. The contract I'd signed with my last major client, a tech giant that had paid me $1.2 million for 6 months of work. At 6:30, I drove to Meridian. The restaurant was exactly what I needed for this: elegant, expensive, the kind of place where Daniel's family went to celebrate achievements and announce engagements. I'd made the reservation 3 weeks ago, back when I'd thought we were celebrating our anniversary. Now it would serve a different purpose. The maitre d' recognized me. I'd been here twice before for business dinners with clients who wanted somewhere impressive. Miss Sarah, wonderful to see you. Your private dining room is ready. Thank you, Marcus. I'll need the presentation equipment we discussed. He led me through the main dining area, past tables of well-dressed couples and business dinners, into the private room I'd reserved. The table was set for 7, wine glasses catching the light from the chandelier overhead. In the corner, discreet but visible, was a screen connected to the restaurant's presentation system. I tested it with my laptop. Everything worked perfectly. I pulled up the first slide, a simple title screen. The Math of Marriage, a Financial Review. I disconnected and waited. Daniel arrived first at 6:55, looking nervous in the suit I'd bought him 2 years ago for his promotion. $1,500, tailored, the one that made him look like he belonged in boardrooms. Sarah, he started, but I cut him off. Wait until everyone gets here. I only want to do this once. His mother arrived next, Margaret sweeping in with Daniel's brother Thomas and sister Jennifer. Margaret was wearing what I recognized as a $3,000 dress, the kind she wore when she wanted to project authority. She looked at me with an expression somewhere between pity and disdain. Sarah, Daniel told me about your little tantrum yesterday. I think we all need to take a breath and discuss this reasonably. We will, I said, as soon as Rick gets here. Daniel's law partner Rick arrived at 7 exactly, looking confused but intrigued. He was the only one who smiled at me with what looked like genuine warmth. Sarah, good to see you. Daniel said this was important but wouldn't tell me why. Take a seat, Rick. Thank you for coming. When everyone was seated, I remained standing at the head of the table. I didn't sit down. I wanted them to have to look up at me. Thank you all for coming, I began. 2 days ago, Margaret told me that Daniel works 70 hours a week supporting our household while I do data entry from home. She suggested I get a real job. Daniel agreed that I've never explained what I actually do for a living. Margaret started to interrupt, but I continued. So I thought tonight would be a good opportunity to clarify things. I connected my laptop to the screen. The title slide appeared. Let's start with the basics. Next slide, a timeline. Daniel and I met 7 years ago at a tech conference in Seattle. I was there as a keynote speaker. Daniel was there with clients from his firm. We started dating 3 months later. We got married after 18 months. Next slide, a photo of our house. This is our home, 4-bedroom, 3-bath in Madison Park. Purchase price $1.8 million. Purchased 8 years ago, 1 year before I met Daniel. The deed is in my name. It has always been in my name. Daniel moved into my house when we got married, not the other way around. I watched Daniel's face. He was staring at the screen like he was seeing it for the first time. When we got married, my lawyer suggested keeping the house in my name for tax purposes. Daniel signed a document acknowledging this. He may not have read it carefully. Next slide, bank statements. This is our joint household account, the one Daniel has access to. As you can see, I contribute 70% of our living expenses. I have done so for our entire marriage. Margaret leaned forward, squinting at the numbers. That can't be right. It's right, next slide. A spreadsheet appeared. This breaks down 6 years of expenses. Mortgage, utilities, property taxes, insurance, groceries, dining out, entertainment, vacations, car payments, and maintenance. My contributions are in blue. Daniel's are in green. The visual was stark. Blue dominated the chart. As you can see, I've covered most of our major expenses. Not because Daniel couldn't contribute, but because I made significantly more money and thought that's what partners did. Next slide. Let's talk about specific purchases. A receipt appeared. Our honeymoon in Italy, 2 weeks, 5-star hotels, first-class flights. Total cost $30,000, paid in full by me. Daniel assumed his bonus from the firm covered it. It didn't. Next slide, another receipt. Daniel's Tesla, $75,000. I bought it for his 40th birthday. Daniel thought he'd financed it himself. He hadn't. I'd set up automatic payments from my account. Next slide, a credit card statement. 18 months ago, Daniel had $60,000 in credit card debt from law school expenses and lifestyle costs. I paid it off in full. He never asked where the money came from. He assumed he'd paid it down over time. Jennifer made a small sound. Thomas was staring at his brother. Margaret's face had gone pale. "This is humiliating," she said quietly. "Yes," I agreed. "It is, should I stop?" No one answered. I took that as permission to continue. Let's talk about what I actually do for a living. Next slide. My company logo. This is Sentinel Security Solutions. I founded it 9 years ago. We provide cybersecurity consulting for Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and international corporations. Next slide. A client list with names partially redacted. These are some of our clients. When their systems are breached, when billions of dollars are at risk, when national security is threatened, they call us. Next slide. Revenue charts. Last year, my company grossed $8.4 million. After expenses, employee salaries, and operational costs, my personal income was $2.7 million. The silence in the room was absolute. Rick let out a low whistle. "Holy shit, Sarah. This year, we're on track for $11 million, I continued. We have 42 employees across 4 offices: Seattle, Boston, Austin, and London. I work from home 2 days a week because I can, because I built a company efficient enough that I don't need to perform productivity for anyone. I turned to face Daniel directly. For 6 years, I've been supporting our lifestyle while you told people I do data entry from home. For 6 years, I've listened to your mother talk about how you're such a good provider while I paid most of our bills. For 6 years, I made myself smaller so you could feel bigger. Next slide, a timeline of Daniel's career. When you were between jobs for 8 months after the firm restructured, I covered all our expenses. You never asked how we were managing. You just assumed we were dipping into savings. When your student loans came due last year and your account was short, I paid the difference. $6,000. You thought you'd paid it yourself. When you wanted to take your mother to France for her birthday, I paid for the flights and the hotel. $8,000. You thanked me for being supportive while you paid for such an expensive trip. I disconnected my laptop. The screen went blank. I didn't tell you any of this because I thought that's what love looked like. I thought being a good wife meant letting you feel successful, even if it meant hiding my own success. I thought partnership meant making myself invisible. I looked around the table. Margaret wouldn't meet my eyes. Thomas was staring at his plate. Jennifer looked like she might cry. Rick was looking at me with something like admiration. And Daniel, my husband of 6 years, looked like a man watching his entire self-concept collapse in real time. I was wrong about all of it, I said quietly. Love shouldn't require invisibility. Partnership shouldn't mean diminishment. And I'm done pretending to be smaller than I am. I picked up my wine glass. The restaurant had poured it while I was presenting. I hadn't noticed. I've filed for dissolution of marriage. My lawyer will send the papers to your office tomorrow, Daniel. The house is mine. The cars are mine. The furniture is mine. You'll need to find somewhere else to live by the end of the month. Margaret found her voice. You can't just kick him out. He's your husband. He's my soon-to-be ex-husband. And yes, I can. It's my house, always has been. Daniel spoke for the first time since I'd started presenting. His voice was rough, broken. Sarah, please, we can work through this. Work through what? Work through the fact that in 6 years of marriage, you never once asked me what I was really building. Never wondered how we could afford our lifestyle. Never questioned why bills always got paid even when your account was low. I set down the wine glass. I'm not angry, Daniel. I'm just done. Done hiding, done shrinking, done pretending that making myself invisible was the same as being loved. I picked up my purse and walked toward the door. Then I paused and turned back. The dinner is paid for. All 7 courses, wine pairings included. It's $1,700. Consider it a parting gift. Enjoy your meal. I walked out of Meridian into the cool Seattle evening. Behind me, I heard someone start crying. I didn't look back. The divorce took 3 months to finalize. Daniel tried to fight it at first, claiming he deserved compensation for emotional support during our marriage. His lawyer argued that he'd contributed to my success through his partnership, his presence, his belief in me. My lawyer had responded with 6 years of bank statements, receipts, and a timeline of every conversation where Daniel had dismissed my work as unimportant. The judge had looked at the evidence and awarded Daniel exactly nothing. No alimony, no property settlement, no share of my company. California might be a community property state, but everything I'd built had been mine before the marriage. and I'd meticulously documented every financial contribution during it. Daniel moved out 2 weeks after the dinner. He took his clothes, his books, and the laptop he'd bought himself. Everything else stayed. The house felt bigger without him in it, emptier, but also cleaner somehow, like I'd been living with a layer of dust I hadn't noticed until it was gone. The story went public anyway, not because I wanted it to, but because someone at the restaurant had talked. Within a week, it was all over social media. Woman reveals multi-million-dollar company at divorce dinner. Husband had no idea wife was millionaire. The invisible CEO who let her husband think he was supporting her. Some people called me a hero. Others called me cruel for humiliating Daniel publicly. Everyone had an opinion about what my marriage had meant, what love should look like, whether I'd been right or wrong to keep my success quiet. I gave exactly 2 interviews, one to Forbes, one to a tech podcast. In both, I talked about the same thing, the invisible labor women do to make men feel successful, the way we're taught that love means making ourselves smaller, and the moment I decided I was done with all of it. The Forbes article went viral. By the next week, I had speaking requests from 3 different conferences, 2 book deal offers, and more consulting inquiries than my company could handle. My assistant hired 2 more people just to manage the incoming requests. Daniel sent one email 3 weeks after the divorce was final. I understand now what I did, how I never saw you, how I let you disappear so I could feel important. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see you now, really see you, and you're the most remarkable person I've ever known. I'm sorry it took losing you to figure that out. I read it once, felt nothing in particular, and archived it. Some lessons come too late. 6 months after the dinner, I stood on a stage at a tech conference in Austin, looking out at 2,000 people who'd paid $500 each to hear me speak. The introduction had been glowing, listing my accomplishments, my company's success, the clients we'd saved from catastrophe. I talked for 45 minutes about building in the shadows, about the cost of invisibility, about the moment I decided to stop making myself small for someone else's comfort. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood. Some were crying. Afterward, in the green room, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 26, wearing a business suit that looked slightly too big for her, like she was trying to dress for the job she wanted. My boyfriend told me I should quit my startup and work for his company instead, she said. He said having 2 entrepreneurs in a relationship would be too competitive, that someone needed to be the support system. What did you tell him? I asked. Nothing yet, but after hearing your talk, I know what I need to do. I smiled. Does he make you feel bigger or smaller? Does being with him expand what you think is possible or contract it? Contract, she said quietly. Then you already know the answer. She nodded, thanked me, and walked away with a determined stride that suggested she'd already made her decision. That evening, I flew back to Seattle. My assistant picked me up from the airport. You have 17 interview requests, 12 speaking invitations, and 1 marriage proposal from someone who saw your Forbes article, she said, scrolling through her phone. I'm assuming we're declining the proposal. Definitely declining the proposal. We drove through the city in comfortable silence. Seattle looked different now, brighter somehow, full of possibility. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I saw your talk today. My wife has been telling me for years that she's building something. I never asked what. I'm asking now. Thank you. I saved the message. Not all men were Daniel. Not all lessons had to be learned through loss. The car pulled up to my house, my beautiful house in Madison Park with the view of the Sound and the life I'd built with my own hands. I got out, thanked my assistant, and walked inside. The house didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like mine. Like a space I'd earned, a place where I could be exactly as big as I was, with no one asking me to shrink. I made dinner, poured wine, and sat by the window watching the sun set over the water. My phone was off. The world could wait. Tomorrow, I'd answer the interview requests, book the speaking engagements, grow the company even larger. Tomorrow, I'd continue being visible, unavoidable, undeniably successful. But tonight, I'd sit in my house that I'd bought with my money, and I'd celebrate the woman I'd finally allowed myself to become. Daniel had called me insubstantial, and in doing so, he'd given me permission to stop performing, stop shrinking, stop being anything other than exactly what I'd always been. I raised my wine glass to the empty room, to the reflection of myself in the darkening window. To visibility, I said out loud. To taking up space, to refusing to disappear. The city lights began to twinkle below, and I smiled. That quiet revolution from invisible to unforgettable had turned out to be the most substantial thing of all. Some women spend their lives making themselves smaller. I'd spent 6 years doing exactly that, but not anymore. Never again. The next morning, I woke to my alarm and checked my emails. 17 new speaking requests, 3 more book deal offers, and 1 email from a major streaming service asking if I'd be interested in consulting on a show about cybersecurity. I forwarded it to my assistant with a note to schedule a call. My company's quarterly numbers had come in overnight. Revenue up 43% from last quarter. 2 new Fortune 500 clients signed. 3 major breaches prevented before they could damage our clients' reputations. We were on track to double our previous year's earnings. I got dressed, drove to my office downtown, and walked into a meeting where 12 of my employees were waiting for my guidance on a complex security issue for a pharmaceutical company. They looked up when I entered, their faces showing respect, trust, expectation. These people knew exactly who I was and what I'd built. There was no invisibility here, no diminishment, no pretending. "All right," I said, sitting down at the head of the table. "Let's solve this problem." And we did. That's what my company did. We solved problems that other people couldn't or wouldn't touch. We walked into disasters and made them manageable. We were expensive, discreet, and devastatingly effective. Just like me. The woman Daniel had called insubstantial. The woman his mother had suggested should become someone's administrative assistant. The woman who'd built an empire while everyone assumed she was clicking around on a computer doing nothing important. I'd stopped being invisible, and the world had no choice but to notice. That, I decided, was the best revenge of all. Not humiliation, not anger, not bitterness. Just refusing to be small anymore. Just existing at my full size, in full view, undeniably present. Some women wait for permission to be remarkable. I'd waited 6 years, but I wasn't waiting anymore.